Okay, here we go. Rule 10. We now come to one of the most abstruse and difficult of all the rules for initiates. Yet at the same time, it is one of the most practical in application and of the greatest usefulness. It concerns the etheric levels of activity. I would have you note that I did not say the etheric levels of consciousness, for there is no such thing as consciousness upon the etheric planes. The four planes which constitute the etheric levels of the physical plane are the lowest correspondence to the four planes whereon the monad and the spiritual triad are active, and, as I have oft told you, upon those levels there is no such thing as consciousness as we understand it. There is only a state of being and of activity for which we have no adequate or illustrative words. The four higher planes of our solar system are the four cosmic etheric planes, and one of the lines of development confronting the initiate is to function adequately in response to the life of the planetary logos upon those planes. That, in the last analysis, constitutes the main field of unfoldment and of acquired wisdom for all initiates above the third degree. In the above paragraph, I have presented you with a new concept. I'm figuring this is regarding initiation, one that has always been implicit in the teaching, but one entirely and completely untouched as yet in any discussion on initiate training. In the rule as given to applicants, the disciple is cautioned to work within those levels according to the methods of the deva or angel evolution. The rule runs as follows. The army of the voice, the devas, in their serried ranks, work ceaselessly. Let the disciple apply himself to a consideration of their methods. Let him learn the rules whereby the army works within the veils of Maya. These particular devas in their serried ranks are the directive agents of the divine energy which implements the purposes of deity upon the physical plane. They work only on etheric levels, either upon our physical plane or on the cosmic etheric levels. They are therefore active in the realm of Maya, which is the etheric plane as we usually understand it, or upon the planes of the spiritual triad. They are not active on the three gross physical levels or upon the astral or mental planes, nor are they active upon the highest or logoic plane. There they are implicit or latent, but not active. They are the great impulsive factors in manifestation, organizing substance, directing the multiplicity of lives and beings who constitute the forms through which God expresses divinity. In a peculiar sense, they are the embodiment of the divine purpose upon the planes of the monad and of the triad, just as the aggregate of energies in man's etheric body is the result of his inner direction and the cause of his outer manifestation. To understand more fully the function of the Deva forces, a man must arrive at some understanding of the forces in his etheric body, in their turn are which in their turn are the consequence of his point of attainment, an attainment demonstrated by his astral or emotional and mental natures and activities. These indicate his point of development. The devas are the agents of the divine will because they are a consequence of a point of attainment of our planetary logos, as he exists outside the seven planes of our sphere of existence, the cosmic physical plane. They are conditioned by his cosmic astral and mental vehicles. In a definite sense, they are the agents of the universal mind even though they are not mental as we understand that term. They are sometimes regarded as blind forces, but that is only because they get their inspiration from levels of divine awareness outside the range of the human consciousness, no matter how high or when used in its widest connotation. Their controlling agent and manifestation is the triangle of energy to which we give the name the three Buddhas of activity. They are therefore closely connected with the third aspect of divinity. They are essentially the eye within the triangle, a most familiar symbol to many today. They are the expression in activity of the all-seeing eye. Through their agency, God sees, and through them and the energy directed through them, He directs the creative process. They are under the complete control of the three Buddhas of activity, who are the cosmic prototypes of the lords of the three major rays, but not in the sense usually understood when the rays are considered in their relation to man. They are the correspondents of these three rays and are responsible for the entire manifested universe, but only within the orbit of the third aspect, the expression of the universal mind. They come from the cosmic mental plane, just as the energy distinctive of the second aspect comes from the cosmic astral plane. God is mind. God is intelligent functioning. God is creative activity. These are the qualities of the Deva evolution. God is love. God is relationship. God is consciousness. These are the three qualities of the Christ evolution. This latter evolution is carried on within the created sphere of influence of the third aspect. God is life. God is fire. God is pure being. These are the qualities of the spirit aspect, the omnipotent aspect of deity. All these three aspects focus themselves and find an outlet for expression upon the levels of the cosmic etheric planes and upon the levels of the etheric planes known to humanity in the three worlds. The law of correspondences is infallible if rightly approached and applied. This broad and general presentation must be rightly grasped if the rule, as given to disciples and initiates, is to be correctly understood. You have been taught that illusion is the characteristic which must be mastered by the initiate as he escapes occultly from the three worlds via the mental plane. And that's from Glamour. Glamour, you are told, is the characteristic of the astral plane and must be dissipated by the disciple as he escapes mystically on to the path of initiation, just as the initiate finds himself, after mastering illusion, on the path of the higher evolution. Maya is the conditioning factor on etheric levels and must be evaded and overcome by the probationary disciple as he escapes from the thraldom of the physical plane. Thus he learns to tread the path of discipleship. These characteristics are, however, only the reaction of humanity to the activities of the Deva evolution, rightly and divinely proceeding with their task of implementing the divine will. When the sphere of their activity comes into contact with the human intelligence, the effect upon humanity, before mastery is gained, is to compel men to wander in the fields of Maya, to drown in the sea of glamour, and to respond to the pull of illusion. In this teaching, you have presented to you, though in a somewhat different form, the ancient problem of duality, involving, as it does, the immense potency of the Deva evolution. It definitely affects humanity. This is due to the fact that it is an expression of the will aspect of Shambhala. As man develops the will aspect, He learns to break loose from the aura of the Deva evolution, and the major task of the hierarchy, as far as basic essentials are concerned, is to provide sanctuary to those who have liberated themselves from the ocean of Deva energies in which their vehicles must perforce move and live and have their being, but with which they have otherwise no point of contact once liberated by their own effort and will from the angels. Let us now study Rule 10. Rule 10. The rules for work within the veils of Maya are known and have been used. Let the group widen all the rents within those veils and thus let in the light. Let the army of the voice be no more heard, and let the brothers onward move within the sound. Then let them know the meaning of the Om, and let them hear that Om as it is sounded forth by him who stands and waits at the very center of the council chamber of the Lord. I would here remind you that we are considering work that the initiate must accomplish and are not considering the usual effort of struggling aspirants to deal with and handle those forces which have worked through into physical expression. These, from the levels of the 48 subplanes, are waiting to precipitate themselves into the dense physical manifested world. The aspirant must ever work from the outside to within and must endeavor to direct his life from above downwards if these forces are to be dominated by him and are not to control him. The initiate, however, works from within the circle, that is, the circle or field of Maya. His activity must therefore be carried forward from the very heart of the mystery of these forces. This he can do because he is in a position to know the type of energy with which he has to contend, to understand the nature of the forces with which he can and must manipulate the Mayavic energies, and thus to dominate the etheric planes. He is also aware where one veil ends and another begins, and from what level he can successfully bring the swirling and living energies into conformity with the divine pattern. It should also be noted here that the energies projected by the initiate into the world of Maya are directed by him from the various centers in his own body and from the central point of energy in each particular center employed. It is the central jewel in the lotus from which the initiate works, and these 7 central focal points, these 7 jewels so called, are the correspondents of the jewel in the egoic lotus. This means, therefore, that successful work within the veils of Maya involves ever the use of the will aspect and the conscious employment of that quota of the Shambhala force which the initiate is able to appropriate and to use because he has begun to work as a focusing agent of the spiritual triad and is no longer working as a soul or as a personality under soul control. This is an important point to remember. It is along the Antakarana that the force used by the initiate must pour, and according to the nature of the work to be done will be the particular strand or thread of the rainbow bridge which the initiate employs. There are 4 veils of Maya constructed necessarily of 7 forces, and these produce the factual and phenomenal aspect in time and space of the great illusion in its 3 forms of illusion, glamour, and Maya. So all that sounds very familiar. There are 7 points of energy through which different aspects of the force needed to produce the desired effect within the veils of Maya can flow, and these correspond to the 7 ray types or qualities. But the major type of energy with which the initiate works upon the physical plane is the 7th, the ray or energy of ritual, of ceremony, of order, and of law. The work done within the veils is one of rearrangement and the ordination and coordination of the forces present as existent Maya. This must provide in time and space the forms through which the plans of the hierarchy can materialize. The souls of all forms can be subjected to the needed experience and so progress towards the fulfillment of the will of God. Maya is not something to be destroyed, dissipated, dissolved, or negated. Maya is in reality an aspect of time and connotes to the initiate the mass of creative forces with which he must work. These are swept into form, generation, and activity, and embody in the transitional, ephemeral, present moment the phenomenal point in evolution reached by the life of God. The work of the initiate, acting under hierarchical inspiration, is to change the present forms into the more adequate forms demanded by the descending life and its dynamic activity. We are therefore dealing with the precipitated aspect of divine evolutionary process. We are concerned with the relation of the army of the voice to the sound, all capitals, which conditions evolution, and with the supervisory work of the hierarchy as it sustains the work of the soul to be found within all forms, built by the army of the voice and by the devas in their serried ranks. The supervisory, directive work of the hierarchy, carried forward by the masters and their groups and by the initiates within those groups, is seldom considered. It is, however, a work of major importance and is one definitely referred to in this rule. Fundamentally, the task set before the hierarchy is to let in the light, but in this time, not in the sense of revelation, of vision, or of illumination. These latter are all aspects of soul light. The work of the initiate is to aid in the construction of the planetary body of light, substance, which will finally reveal the nature of deity and the glory of the Lord. It is the planetary correspondence to the light body through which Christ and all the sons of God who have reached perfection finally manifest. It is a vehicle created by the energy of will, and it is implemented and held in being by the will. It expresses itself exoterically by the projection of this will energy via the central point in each of the 7 chakras or lotuses. In studying these rules for the initiate, it must ever be remembered that they concern primarily the use of the will or first aspect. This is the energy of the monad, utilized via the spiritual triad and related to the personality via the antakarana. Secondary interpretations and tertiary correspondences are always possible, but the main significance of these rules is related to the first divine aspect. You have therefore, as you reflect, think, study, and correlate, to bear constantly in mind that one, the 7 ray types, 2, the monad, spiritual triad, and the threefold personality. These constitute another septonate. 3, the 7 groups of masters. 4, the 7 centers and their 7 central points or jewels. And 5, the 4 vowels of Maya. Various other septonates could also be related, but such relationship is not required by the initiate who has consciously discarded all these lower septonates and works now with the 7 major energies, the 7-fold field of their activity, and the septenary aspect of the implementing instrument, whether planetary or individual. Simplification proceeds rapidly as one nears the goal of the spirit. Will ever concerns itself with the essential and not with the details of manifestation. Love concerns itself with transitional evolutionary fundamentals, whilst intelligence concerns itself with the detail and its coherent coordination in response to the impulse and attractive force of divine love and the dynamic impulse of the Spirit. Let us now proceed, after these preliminary remarks, to take this 10th rule sentence by sentence. These are 5 in number, and the first which we will consider is 1. The rules for work within the veils of Maya are known and have been used. Students should remember that the work of the hierarchy is constantly conditioned by the point in evolution of the human hierarchy. In the early days of human history, thinking and progress had practically no place and therefore little or no effect upon the forces and energies which were active upon etheric levels. At that period, they were left in a relatively quiescent state or else were swept into activity by definite and planned impression from the hierarchy. Any effect coming from the human kingdom was due solely to mass impulse or impression. This was very little owing to the lack of coordinated relation between units and groups within the human family. Later, as family units massed together and formed tribes, and then tribe united with tribe to form larger tribes or embryonic nations, this mass effect increased, but there was still but little thinking or direction connected with it. It was largely instinctive, and, if I might so express it, the etheric plane was in reality more in the nature of a matrix surrounding a valuable creation and was essentially protective, separating, and slightly energizing. In the Atlantean days, the plane whereon humanity received its major direction or unfoldment was such that the emotional, impulsive nature and the field of maturing desire became dominantly active. Then the real difficulty within the realm of Maya started. Hitherto, only 2 energies had been felt upon the etheric plane: the energy of life itself via the Sutratma as it passed through the etheric plane in order to produce exoteric livingness upon the physical plane, and secondly, the energy of the hierarchy as a whole, producing a slow, broad, though somewhat negative organization of the prevalent forces. But then a third most potent force generated by humanity was beginning to make an impact upon etheric forces. Men were beginning, at this early period of human history, to desire, and this desire was not, as hitherto, of a purely animal nature, and hence an emanation from dense physical substance, and therefore not related to a principle, but it embodied a new type of energy and was, in reality, man's first expression of the highest divine aspect. Desire is the lowest reflection within the human consciousness of the will aspect. This potent vibration of desire was evoked by men who were as yet without any spiritual vision of any kind. They were purely material in their instinctive reactions, and rightly so at that particular time. And these reactions attracted the attention of certain purely evil energies or beings. These beings availed themselves of the situation in order to satisfy their desire for power, again a distortion of the will or first aspect. Thus, the Black Lodge was founded. It fed upon human desire and resembled a vast overshadowing empire. It vitiated human living and increased the growth of desire far beyond normal expectancy or hierarchical planning, thus creating false goals and standards, building a barrier between the lowest planetary center, humanity, and the middle point or center, the hierarchy. It will be apparent, therefore, that the following energies were let loose within the realm of Maya. 1. the instinctive force of animal desire. This was not wrong in itself and is subject to negation in time and normally is controlled. 2. The stream of descending life, and in two aspects, the life aspect as it bestows being, and the life aspect as it preserves form. 3. The steady impact of the attractive power of the soul implemented by the hierarchy and increasing in potency as time elapses. And 4. The impelling power of material desire focused in the Black Lodge, both feeding human desire and drawing a form of life from the massed desire of humanity. And also 5, human development along astral lines expressing itself as certain well-defined energies or force directions. These being A, material desire for possessions, B, desire for that which is owned by others, to this the commandment thou shalt not steal as reference. C, personality aims and ambitions. These constitute a form of focused desire of a compelling, life-determining nature. D, aspiration leading to vision and to the mystic way. E, purification, the conscious handling of desire upon the probationary path. F, initiation. The first 2 initiations are taken, as you know, upon the astral plane and bring complete release both from that plane of glamour and from the realm of Maya. All throughout this period, the organization of the etheric plane has been going on, subject to the impact of energies and forces as listed above, plus certain other energies latent and potent with which we have no immediate concern. Both the Great White Lodge and its opponent, the Black Lodge, increased steadily in potency. Gradually, the forces took organized form, and the 4 veils of Maya, or the 7 separating energies, became well defined. When this differentiation was complete, 2 great planetary events, if I might call them so, were consummated. 1, the 7 centers in the human body, 5 up the spine and 2 in the head, were esoterically in shape. The 7 lotuses or chakras were functioning, some powerfully, whilst others remained unawakened. These 7 were now visible to clairvoyant vision. 2, the 7 ashrams of the masters in their 7 groups, conditioned by the 7 rays, appeared, motivated from Shambhala, organized at this time upon the higher levels of the mental plane, and gradually supplied with personnel from the ranks of humanity itself, as one by one men achieved initiation. Paralleling this activity and implemented, fed, and sustained by the Black Lodge was the appearance of glamour upon the astral plane. To this thickening glamour, humanity steadily contributed and responded. Then, as evolution progressed and the human intellect began to make itself felt, the 4 veils of Maya and the great curtain of glamour began to condition the mental plane. Illusion then appeared, and the distinction between truth and falsehood, between good and evil, and between the left-hand path and the path of initiation became apparent to the advanced humanity of the time. These distinctions had always been known to the hierarchy, but now human beings were faced with them and recognized them. The great potency of intellectual choice confronted humanity, and the Aryan race, as that name is correctly used to denote modern intelligent humanity, came into being. As the ages slipped away, men contributed more and more both to the problem and to the solution of Maya, of glamour, and of illusion. The potency of human thought began to make itself felt. Men in increasing numbers sought the path of liberation, and so passed on into the hierarchy. They became active and instructed opponents of the Black Lodge and intelligent wielders of energy, as it can be projected downwards and used to destroy the four veils, to dissipate glamour, and to dispel illusion. Humanity responded more and more sensitively to the impacts, both subjective and objective, and their cooperation began to be effective and useful to the hierarchy, necessitating some changes in hierarchical techniques, releasing hierarchical workers for other and different activities, and greatly complicating the problem and menacing the safety and the status of the Black Lodge. One of the results of this mental development was the sending of the disciples out into the world of men. They issued forth in large numbers, and whilst preserving their conscious link with the ashram with which they were affiliated, they could be trusted to live among men as men and to bring their potency to bear upon the problem of Maya and glamour, doing so from below upwards. This work had to be done by disciples who could stand under pressure, who would, in spite of all difficulties, live nobly and prepare for and take the initiation, which was for them their next step. Several hundred years ago, only a few could be so trusted. Today, in 1944, there are many in every land, though there are very few in Germany, owing to the concentration in that unhappy land of the power of the Black Lodge, and also to the misuse of the Shambhala force. This force has been so isolated, and its destructive aspect utilized in Germany, and this has been done without the paralleling activity of the love energy of the hierarchy. It is this fact that has made it impossible since 1933 for disciples of the White Lodge to enter. Elsewhere, however, the concentration of active disciples is greater than at any other time in human history. I have emphasized this point because our second phrase, let the group widen all the rents within those veils, has reference here to the disciples and the groups which they have everywhere gathered around themselves. It is these groups, many in number and differing in ray potency, which will lead the world through the post-war period into the New Age. It is these groups, many in number and differing in ray potency, which will lead the world through the post-war period into the New Age. It is their pressure upon the physical plane which has precipitated the crisis between the Great White Lodge and the Black Lodge. Their work is to let in the light, and where the light goes, the Black Lodge must fade out and disappear. It feeds on glamour and illusion and uses the veils of Maya as a protection. Students would do well to avoid naming and differentiating the four veils. The veils themselves are transient and variable. They differ as they come under the impact of the seven rays. It is not possible or practical to distinguish them one from the other, except from the angle of the hierarchy, and their destruction today, though it was not so earlier, has to come from the dense physical plane, and the attack must be made by personalities and individualities dwelling in physical bodies. This is a somewhat new model of approach, for hitherto only a few disciples and initiates have been able to so to work. Today, hundreds and thousands of disciples are working, and thus learning to use the ancient rules for work within the veils of Maya. Let me here give you some of these rules or formulas as they are to be found in the Master's Book of Rules, and as I can translate them, some are untranslatable. 1. Focus the force at the jewel's point and find the veil that it can touch. 2. Carry the force from point to point and then project. 3. Look for the energy in form behind the veil attacked. A rent within the veil exists. Find it and see. A path lies through the veils, giving access to the several courts. Walk on that path, wielding destruction and clearing out the refuse in the court. The court and the money changers is the last. Meet the descending forces and find the current which is yours. Watch for the evil stream of force which seeks to mend the rents. Project upon that stream the energy of which you know. It led you from the ashram into the veils. Use it and drive the evil back unto the astral plane. Work within the sound and know it as the source of power. Use first the voice, then use the Om, and later use the sound. All three together will suffice. There are other rules, but these will give you the major recognitions needed to do this type of work. These are the rules which the adventuring disciple needs to know. They have been used and should not be interpreted by the lower mind, but with the aid of the initiate consciousness. Let the group widen all the rents within those veils, and thus let in the light. And this being the second phrase. We come now to a definite group injunction or instruction. The aid of the group is invoked almost in the form of an order. The point of this formulated injunction is that in the new era and in the interlude between the past, wherein prominent disciples worked within the veils of Maya, and the new age, wherein humanity itself will consciously function upon the etheric plane, the work of the esoteric groups under the direction of the new group of world servers is needed. They will have the capacity to recognize the distinction between the various veils. This is the next needed development. The groups must focus the energy at the very center of the group being. The group must carry the force from point to point and from veil to veil. The group must project the destroying energy and become unitedly aware of what each veil hides. The group must perform the activities, 7 in all, of purification. The group must meet, accept, and distribute the descending spiritual energy which will finally consummate the work. The group, through the use of that descending current, will drive the forces of evil back onto the astral plane and will together work with the three aspects of the first ray. These are typified by the voice, the Om, and the sound. You may consider looking at the chart for a while as we discuss these things. In the above, you have in reality a great formula for group activity and also a potent method once the group can unitedly work together for the cleansing and the reorganization of the forces active in the world today. These forces are now raging and running wild. Their effect is almost tangible, being in etheric substance and factually and visibly present under the control of the Black Lodge. This lodge uses the voices of lying propaganda, the word of death, which I shall not give to you for the Om, the word of life suffices, and the sound of the densest aspect in manifestation, the sound of power in the mineral kingdom. This constitutes an unparalleled condition and creates a unique concentration of the forces of good and the forces of evil upon the etheric plane. The task of all groups which are working under the masters of the wisdom is to let in light, utilizing those rents which already exist within the veils of Maya. 3 major rents within these veils must be here noted. They are symbolically referred to in the Bible, though their essential meaning has not been noted or comprehended. The first major rent was made by the establishment of the law of God, and this is portrayed for us symbolically in the Old Testament in the story of Moses. He went up into the mount of God and there received the 10 Commandments. This is the expression of divine law as adapted for humanity and as needed in the projection of those forces which will destroy, purify, and reorganize. Moses, the lawgiver, penetrated to one of the halls within the veils of Maya, and there encountered the glory of the Lord. This was of such a radiance that, as the old commentary puts it, he who entered among the first to penetrate within the veils absorbed the light and knew not how to pass it on. Neither he nor they were ready, but the light was there, and likewise the 2 directing eyes. But only one can use, project, and send the light upon its mission. The other must be blinded, and of this fact the lawgiver was aware. He therefore veiled the light, assuming towards this end a fragment of that which he had helped destroy, and so descended from the mountaintop back to the darkness of the earth. The second, and much the most important rent, was made by the power of the second aspect when the Christ subjected the Master Jesus to the 4th initiation, and their joint influence was triumphant over death. Then we read that the veil of the temple was split in twain from the top to the bottom. The lawgiver assisted at the first rending as the climax to the 3rd initiation, and there was a somewhat similar process of glorification. A similar event took place at the transfiguration of the Christ, overshadowing, or rather working through, the Master Jesus. But at the triumph over death and through the great renunciation or crucifixion episode, a great and major rending took place. The law, when rightly kept and interpreted, defines man's attitude upon the mental plane and serves to make a rent in the etheric veil, separating the etheric vehicle in its 4-fold aspect from the dense physical form. The rending of the second veil at the time of the crucifixion let in light on to the second level of the etheric plane, and a new type of illumination was spread abroad upon the earth. Law and love could now penetrate into the consciousness of humanity in a new and direct manner, as the brain of man became involved through the substance of the etheric counterpart of the physical brain. The instinct to self-preservation, one of the lowest aspects of law, and the tendency to sensitivity, feeling or emotion, one of the lowest forms of love, could be expressed in a more comprehensive manner. Another rending of the veil, and one of relatively minor importance, took place when Saul of Tarsus saw the glory of the Lord and was changed into Paul the Apostle. His forward moving and potent directness and sincerity, pushing along the road to Damascus, forced him to penetrate through one of the separating veils. The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. This force, working in Saul, drove him through the veil which prevented vision, and the rent thereby made brought him a new revelation. He was, we are told, completely blinded for 3 days, and this the esoteric records corroborate. This is a well-known correspondence to the 3 days in the tomb, and one recognized by esotericists. It corresponds also to the penetration into the third heaven to which Paul testified later in his life. He realized the nature of the law, as his later epistles demonstrate. He was brought to the feet of the initiator through the effect of love, and thus he availed himself of the 2 earlier rents in the veil. Whilst thus reaching out to the light, he wrote that epistle about which so much controversy has raged, the Epistle to the Hebrews. In it, the results of the rending of the third veil provide the keynote and express the first and highest aspect, as the 2 earlier rents led to the revelation of the third and second divine qualities. This first aspect is seen as synthesis, as the communion of saints, and as related to the Lord of the world, Melchizedek. Read that epistle in the light of these remarks, and note how a great initiate endeavored to reveal some facts inherent in the will or power aspect. These were, however, far beyond the ken of the disciple and aspirants of the time, but can today form a true part of the realization of humanity. Law, love, union, or synthesis, all these great energies have seeped into the human consciousness and now provide the platform upon which the new civilization can be founded, the new approach to God be taken, and new human relations be implemented. 3 great rents, therefore, now exist, as well as numerous smaller and less important ones to which no reference has been or need be made. 3 great sons of God, at the moment of initiation, made a contribution to the human consciousness through their determined will to law, will to love, and will to synthesis. Mankind was thereby aided to move forward more easily along the lighted way, to pass through the halls of Maya, aided by the light pouring through the rents made in the separating veils by perfected divine men at the very moment of their triumph. A 4th great rent still remained to be made as a result of the energies released and the gained good which the 3 earlier rents have made possible. This 4th major rent will be made by humanity itself, standing with massed intent, focused through the groups which are externalizations of the ashrams of the masters. It will therefore be made at the time that the hierarchy takes physical shape upon the earth again. Bear in mind the symbolical nature of this teaching. The veils are not actually existing veils in the usual sense of that term. They are in the nature of opposing forces and energies which act as inhibitory factors to the aspirant as he seeks to make progress, and to the entire human family as it moves onward upon the path of evolution. They are not basically related to consciousness at all, for in the majority of cases, these veils lie on the earthward side of being and not upon the side of light. They are essentially physical forces, and although they are the result of man's own effort and activity down the ages, they are largely unrealized, unseen obstacles to his progress. They constitute the lowest concentration of forces precipitated from levels of activity other and higher than the physical, as you understand physical substance. If one might use a phrase which, even if true, is misleading, they lie between the subtle inner man, mental and astral, and his physical brain. They are that which prevents brain registration of the world of causes and of meaning. This inner world can be emotional or mental in its focus and in its forced precipitation on to the etheric plane. It can be the fused result of personality integration and be a combination of energies, or it can be dominated by the effects of soul energy. These, if evoked, can penetrate occultly and drive out or break down and through the separating veiling forces, thus producing coordination eventually between soul and brain. These veils are as curtains over the windows of vision. They prevent realization of that which lies beyond the room or area of average or mediocre experience, and they prevent the light from penetrating. The work of the three sons of God referred to above is not concerned with the rending of the veils of their own interior life and forces, thus bringing about soul contact unimpeded and clear, or with the illumination of experience upon the physical plane that had long ago been effected in these special and individual cases. Their service was rendered to humanity, and they made rents in the veils which separated mankind as a whole from the higher spiritual experience and from registration of the fact of the existence of the hierarchy. Theirs was a universal service and made possible further human progress, for until some greater measure of light had been let in, it was not possible for man to see and grasp the necessity to destroy the obstacles to light. The veils remain unperceived by the average aspirant until some light appears through the rents in the curtain of impediment. The glory of the Christ and the uniqueness of his accomplishment lies in the fact that he was the first to bring about the rending of the veils from the top to the bottom. This he could do because he acted as the world's savior outside and independent of humanity. He was free from the aura of the human family, and, again quoting the old commentary, as far as it is possible to translate these archaic terms, from above he worked, and from the further side issued the force which tore its way into the separating forces, driving them in a threefold direction, from the point which is the highest, to the right and to the left, thus letting in that streaming force which resolved itself as light, as love, as lifting energy. Thus worked the one for whom all men must wait. He is as man, but works not as a man. He works as light divine, as energy supreme, and as the savior of the world of men. Let me again quote from the same source and give you the ancient names of the veils. Next to the earthly plane is found the veil of impulsion, and then the hall of concentration. To that succeeds the veil of distortion, related to the world of glamour, as impulsion is to force. Beyond that veil is found the hall of choice. And then we find another veil, the veil of separation. And beyond it lies the hall of blinded men, blinded by light, but facing towards the final veil, the veil of aspiration. 4 veils, 3 halls, and many men. I will leave you to make due application of this paragraph of stated truth and of condensed realization. I would remind you that concentration is one thing to the aspirant and a very different thing to the initiate, and that the choices made by the initiate resemble not those made by the disciple. The blinding force referred to can range all the way from the deep spiritual darkness in which the average man moves, through the blindness of which Saul of Tarsus was the exponent, up to that condition which overwhelms the highest initiate as he awaits entrance into the council chamber of the Lord. Blindness is a prelude to initiation of no matter what degree. It is only at the last and highest initiation that the tendency to blindness comes to a complete end. In the earlier stages of evolution, blindness is natural, innate, unavoidable, and impenetrable. For ages, man walks in darkness. Then comes the stage wherein this normal blindness is a protection, but has also entered a phase wherein it can be overcome. Technically speaking, the blindness to which I have referred is something different. From the moment when a human being catches the first faint glimpse of the something other and sees himself in juxtaposition to that dimly sensed distant reality, the blindness with which I have dealt is something imposed by the soul upon the hastening aspirant, so that the lessons of conscious experience, of discipleship, and later of initiation may be correctly assimilated and expressed. By its means, the hurrying seeker is defended from making too rapid a superficial progress. It is depth and a profound rootedness, if I may coin such a word, for which the inner teacher and later the master looks, and occult blindness, its need, its wise handling, and its final elimination are part of the curriculum imposed upon the candidate. This truth is recognized, though not truly interpreted, by the Masonic fraternity. In one of the most important and highest initiations, the candidate enters with unblinded eyes and no hoodwink is applied. Then halfway through the ceremony he is blinded, and in that condition passes through the terrific tests, symbolic of a certain high stage upon the path. Blindness is, therefore, esoterically speaking, the place of learning, and is related to the eye, throat, and heart doctrine. It is not related to the dim vision, the sensing of half-truths, and the gropings of the aspirant in the process of learning about himself, or as he visions the goal and seeks to walk the path. That is a familiar condition, and one which all beginners are subjected, and which they cannot avoid, for it is inherent in their natures. Occult blindness is spiritually induced and blacks out the glory and the promised attainment and reward. The disciple is thrown back upon himself. All he can see is his problem, his tiny field of experience, and his, to him, feeble and limited equipment. It is to this stage that the prophet Isaiah refers when he speaks of giving to the struggling aspirant the treasures of darkness. The beauty of the immediate, the glory of the present opportunity, and the need to focus upon the task and service of the moment are the rewards of moving forward into the apparently impenetrable darkness. For the initiate, this blindness is still more esoteric. There remains for him absolutely no light whatsoever, no earth light nor any light within the three worlds at all. There is only blackness. To this the mystic has given the name the dark night of the soul. The true dark night, of which the mystic's dark night is only a dim reflection, to speak paradoxically, marks a very exalted state of being and stage of development. It was into the blackness and darkness that Christ penetrated as he overshadowed one of his masters, the Master Jesus, upon the cross. This will strike a new note for many and can only now be revealed. It is concerned with the facility with which a master participates in the experience, subjectively realized, of the disciples whom he has prepared for initiation. It relates also to the still higher identification of the Christ with those initiates who are taking the fourth and fifth initiations, such as the Master Jesus and the experience referred to above. Christ is no longer the initiator, but stands to the initiate as the Master does to the disciple. It is a curious phase of identical participation, which evokes no reaction from the Master or the Masters of the Masters, Christ, the Master of the Masters, the Christ, except insofar as it enables the divine participator himself to face another area of darkness, veiling and hiding a still more supernal glory. The above paragraph is far beyond the comprehension of the average student, but will be comprehended by those whose eyes are open to be blinded. Students must remember that the four veils upon the etheric plane are only the lower symbolic correspondences to certain great areas of divine expression, and that ever the glory must be approached through the darkness. Such is the law. These higher veiling factors can be mentioned and enumerated, but more information concerning these mysteries, the separating darkness encountered by the initiate, may not be given. Veil 1, that which faces the disciple as he wrestles with the dweller on the threshold and becomes conscious of the angel of the presence, though as yet he sees him not. Veil 2, that which the initiate encounters at the fourth initiation, and which forces him to cry out in his blindness, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" The words uttered by the Christ at that time, and as the participator, have been forgotten by the orthodox, though preserved by the esotericists. To them, HPB refers in the Secret Doctrine. Veil 3, that mysterious blindness which overwhelms the initiate when, as the embodiment of all the forces of the spiritual triad, he faces the monad and is impelled forward by the devastating will of the first aspect. Of this I may not write, it concerns the sixth and seventh initiations. And veil 4, that unknown, impenetrable void, the utter darkness of negation, which those who are in the council chamber of the Lord, the world, and who are focused in Shambhala, face when the time comes for them to negate our planetary life expression and experience altogether. They must then leave behind all the 7 planes of spiritual and human experience and pass onward and out into phases of life and being for which we have no words and of which we have no conception. They leave through the fourth veil on the cosmic, physical, etheric levels on the highest plane of our 7 planes and pass on to the cosmic astral plane. There they negate its existence as they have earlier negated the existence of the astral plane, so familiar an illusion to all of us. The initiate passes on to the cosmic astral plane and finds what? Who knows? I do not. Thus the veils serve their purpose. Blindness nurtures and protects, provided it is innate and natural, soul imposed or spiritually engendered, if it is willfully self induced, if it provides an alibi for grasped knowledge, if it is assumed in order to avoid responsibility, then sin enters in and difficulty ensues. From this may all of you be protected. Step by step, the brothers of the light and others who tread consciously the lighted way have removed themselves from the lure of form. The army of the voice no longer can succeed in deflecting their footsteps, and the veils of illusion no longer block their vision, and they're moving forward. A relative freedom has been gained, and the initiate stands free from much that has hitherto hindered his progress. The world of form, of glamour, and of seduction has for him no further appeal. He comprehends the significance of the injunction which is embodied in the third phase of this 10th rule. 3. Let the army of the voice be no more heard, and let the brothers onward move within the sound. Putting the idea into esoteric terms, the above sentence could be paraphrased as follows. The voices and the voice fade out. The Om, A-U-M, is replaced by the Om, O-M, and at the center of that Om, O-M, the brother stands. The many voices of the world, the flesh, and the devil are no longer distinguished. There is nothing within the consciousness of the initiate which can respond to them. The voice of the silence dies out also, and the word itself cannot be heard. Only the sound remains. This is the sound which reverberates in the formless worlds. It is the sound to which the spiritual triad responds, and of which the initiate is a part, because the sound which he makes as he proceeds upon his creative way is a part of the universal sound. It should be pointed out that he who stands at the very center of the council chamber of Shambhala sounds forth all words, the word, and he also utters the sound. This is apt to be forgotten. He it is who intones the Om, A-U-M, and all things come to be. He it is who voices the word, the Om, the word, the O-M, and God incarnate in humanity appears on earth. He it is who utters the sound, all capitals, and upon that outgoing breath holds all things in life. And in the rise and fall of its cadences, there is found the cyclic rhythm of the creative process. He it will be who will withdraw the sound, and centering the vibration within himself, will someday bring to a close this periodic manifestation and carry the sound to other localities in space, holding it in quiescence on the withdrawn breath until a later cycle of expression dawns. Then it will again be exalted and sent forth to provide a new field of experience for the lives which, in cyclic rhythm, again seek to manifest. The entire story of incarnation is hidden in the understanding of the sound, all capitals, and its differentiation into the Om, O-M, and the Om, A-U-M. When we can identify the sound and are no longer moved by the O-M, Om, then the initiate becomes a Christ in expression and makes his appearance, either in physical form or upon the planes of what to us might be called the areas of non-appearance. He can then contain and utilize the energies of which the spiritual triad is the custodian and which are the expression of the will and purpose of God. Though the initiate may not be part of the planetary government, and though he may not be a member of the council chamber at Shambhala, for only a limited number of initiates are so placed, he nevertheless has the right to move on identical levels and to prepare himself for those higher evolutionary processes which will give him entrance to the cosmic astral plane. This will enable him to see through and to recognize cosmic glamour, and will give him the key, the hidden key, to the world of feeling and of sentiency, of which our feeling response and our emotional and intuitional sensitivity are but the dim and distorted reflections. This is a factor of some importance to have in mind if a right sense of proportion is to be developed. The initiate has learnt on earth that the astral plane is in fact non-existent, at least for those of the higher degrees of initiation. This knowledge constitutes the first step towards the comprehension of the secret of negation, towards a true understanding of the basis and of the ever-existent pairs of opposites, and towards the knowledge which lies behind the significance of negation. The above sentence is in all probability of little meaning to you, but it nevertheless contains a truth for which the trials, experiences, and initiations of planetary existence prepare the initiate. They endow him with those qualities which will enable him to contact cosmic evil and yet remain untouched, eventually to play his part in bringing the Black Lodge and its brotherhood to an unholy finish. The roots of the Black Lodge are on the cosmic astral plane, as the roots of the White Lodge and its brotherhood are on the cosmic mental plane. This is, in reality, only for the time being, and in order to see certain organized activities upon the star Sirius perfected and carried to a consummation. This is often hinted in my writings. The way of the higher evolution leads to the cosmic astral plane, and the goal which carries a man there is the transcendent vision accorded at some of the higher initiations. The quality which enables him to work as a creative factor in the Great White Lodge is the developed Buddhic faculty. It is upon the wings of sound that he travels, to use a well-known though little understood metaphor. This can only be when he can, hear the Om, as it is sounded forth by him who stands and waits at the very center of the council chamber of the Lord. These are grave and solemn thoughts, and of small use to the average reader. It is essential, however, that he avoid the concept that the attainment of the highest initiation upon this planet marks the end or the consummation of a great and final stage. It only marks the beginning of significance. Let me repeat this. It is essential, however, that he avoid the concept that the attainment of the highest initiation upon this planet marks the end or the consummation of a great and final stage. Apparently it does not. It only marks the beginning of significance. This is a statement of esoteric value. Just as the attainment of physical control sets the neophyte free for the learning of higher lessons in preparation for the major initiations, so the surmounting of the conditions presented by the 7 planes of our planetary life sets the initiate, such as the Buddha or the Christ, free for still higher and more important conditioning circumstances. Their real work as members of the White Brotherhood is on the point of beginning, and the true purpose of the existence of the Great White Lodge begins faintly to dawn upon their entranced and amazed understanding. It is of real value to us, therefore, to endeavor to grasp the continuity of revelation and the vast future or vista of unfolding wonder which, stage by stage, grade by grade, and plane by plane, unfolds before the initiate consciousness. We enter here into a consideration of realms of advancement of which even advanced humanity has no faintest idea. We are touching upon goals and objectives which confront the advanced members of the hierarchy. We are dealing with ideas and concepts for which we have no adequate terminology and which are of such a nature that the human mechanism of thought proves incapable of registering them. What, for instance, do the words or phrases divine purpose, Shambhala, the Lord of the world, states of registration or awareness, which have no relation to sentiency as it expresses itself through consciousness, the Lodge on Sirius, and similar concepts convey to you? I would venture to suggest that in reality they represent nothing, and this because the goal of all who read these words is contact with the soul, recognition of and by the hierarchy, and initiation. If I say to you that the words, the Om, O-M, as it is sounded forth by him who stands within the confines of Shambhala, signify that the one sound, rounded and full, of O is sounded forth, but that the concluding sound of the M is omitted, does that convey aught to your intelligence? Again, I venture to say that it does not. It is therefore of small elucidation. It is therefore of small importance for me to enlarge upon this phase of the rules. I would be more profitably employed if I elucidated somewhat the meaning of the words, the council chamber of the Lord. 3 concepts have perchance taken shape in your minds in connection with Shambhala, if you have sought the true esoteric attitude. 1. Humanity exists as a great center of intelligent energy in the substance of the planetary life. 2. The spiritual center where attractive, coherent magnetic energy is focused and from whence it flows in 2 directions. A, towards the 3 worlds and the 4 kingdoms of nature, and B, towards Shambhala and the 2 higher kingdoms of manifestation, is what we usually call hierarchy, the kingdom of God, the center of love and of mediating understanding. Note these last 2 words. And 3, that there is another center which is neither spiritual nor human, but which is characterized by divinity. Divinity is the expression of the will or purpose of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. That center where the will of God is focused and dynamically sent forth to carry out the purpose of Shambhala. The time has now come when a distinction must be made by esotericists between the words spiritual and divine. They are not the same, nor do they have the same significance. The quality of spirituality is love. The quality of divinity is will. There is a definite distinction between the two, and the mediating principle, or that which relates or unites the 2 qualities, is wisdom. Of that wisdom, the Buddha was the expression in time and space. That means that there was only a relative and limited manifestation of that fusing, linking principle. His great achievement, unrealized by him, was an innate and, at that time not now, unconscious recognition of the distinction between love and will, and an ability to express in himself a fusing, blending energy which could and did bring together love and will, soul and monad. At the same time, and later in full expression in Palestine, the Christ demonstrated for the teaching of humanity the at-one-ment of love and intelligence, of soul and personality. These are points of real importance to have in mind, embodying therefore divinity in a sense and form incomprehensible to disciples, and which constitutes the goal of such advanced individuals as the Christ, are a group of lives or focused integrated beings who stand around Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the world. As I have earlier said, Sanat Kumara is the planetary logos to the planetary logos, what the personality plus soul is to the disciple. He is also the coherent force within the planet, holding, through his radiatory influence, all forms and all substances in the planetary form, so that they constitute one coherent, energized, and functioning whole. A parallel to this, though on a much smaller scale, can be seen in the radiatory influence of the Christ as it permeates, energizes, and holds in coherent expression the Christian church in all its many aspects in the world. A still smaller analogy can be seen in the influence wielded by a disciple who stands at the center of a group and holds it also in coherent and useful manifestation. Intermediate between these two symbols of will and love, united in manifestation, the Christ and a disciple, is the work of the world disciple, for the influence is wider and more far-reaching than that of a disciple, yet not as potent or comprehensive as that of the Christ. Coherency affecting lives, forms, and substances is an expression of the will and purpose, motivated by love and implemented intelligently in carrying forward the plans through which the purpose seeks expression. When, however, you arrive at the potency of such a being as Sanat Kumara, you will find his individual potency enhanced and amplified by the fused ability of a group of lives who, though not as far advanced as he upon the path of evolution, which stretches before the planetary logoi, are yet greatly in advance of the most developed members of the spiritual hierarchy. It is these lives who constitute the innermost circle of the council chamber of the Lord of the world. Their normal contexts are extraplanetary and are very seldom of a planetary nature. They are in direct rapport with the planetary logos upon his own high plane, the cosmic mental plane. This great and unknown being uses Sanat Kumara as the soul uses a temporary personality when that personality is at an advanced stage of initiate consciousness. This is only parallel and an analogy and must not be unduly elaborated in the detail of relationship. The major characteristic of these lives is will or purpose. They embody and consciously know and intelligently appreciate what is the motivating idea which the planetary logos, working consciously on his own high level, seeks to work out and achieve in his planned incarnation through a planet. He functions when in incarnation on the cosmic plane, cosmic physical plane, and embodies the seven principles of which we know, and all is focused in and through the individuality of Sanat Kumara, implemented and energized through the seven planetary centers, the three Buddhas of activity, who are also members of the Great Council, are expressions of the counterparts on cosmic levels of the energies latent in the three permanent atoms in the three worlds of human endeavor. This is again a dangerous parallel to propose for as a symbol. It lacks any true analogy. The seven spirits before the throne of God are also members of the council, and each of them is in close rapport and contact with one or other of the seven sacred planets in our solar system, and can thus draw upon the energies which they embody. It will therefore be apparent to you inferentially how comparatively few of the members of our hierarchy have been or have yet been able to reach the state or condition of development which would warrant their forming a part of the Great Council, or which would enable them to respond to the O sounded out at intervals of 100 years by Sanat Kumara. It is this sound which gathers together the responsive units into the council. This council is held at 100-year intervals, and as far as our modern humanity is concerned, these councils have been held under our arbitrary dates in 1725, 1825, and 1925. At these councils, those who are responsible for the planetary development along certain predetermined lines make their reports. Decision is made as to new unfoldments. Certain types of energy, cosmic and solar, are made available for the carrying forward of the plans which implement the purpose. The evolution of consciousness in the three worlds receives necessarily major attention. I would have you remember that this refers not only to the human kingdom and its unfoldment, but to the three subhuman kingdoms, which are, from many points of view, of equal importance to the human. This is a hard saying for humanity to accept. I would have you remember that this refers not only to the human kingdom and its unfoldment, but to the three subhuman kingdoms. Okay. It is these great goals which slowly dawn on the consciousness of the initiate as he advances step by step along the path of initiation. They must perforce be noted here, even if dealing with matters incomprehensible to the reader. Initiation otherwise would be apt to be regarded as the attainment of a relatively static condition, and would land the initiate in an eternal impasse or impassable cul-de-sac. Initiation is, in fact, the recognition of the goals which are implemented from Shambhala. It is not a process whereby a man becomes solely a member of the spiritual hierarchy. Initiation, as the candidate understands it, is in reality only incidental and preparatory to the path of the higher evolution. There is little more I can tell you anent this rule. The subject is, as you can see, too advanced even for the initiate who, in a few decades, will read and study these instructions. That your vision may expand and your power to think and reflect abstractly may grow is my hope and wish for you. Another incredible chapter. Okay, friends, on to Rule 11 next. Have a good one.